I went right into that at the middleweight division, my natural weight.
Your natural weight.
And I remember going into the warm-up room, for the day, we're going back in the warm-up room. And I remember going in there and I just said to everybody, I don't care who you are. I don't care who your coach is. I don't care how well I know you. I'm knocking everybody out today.
There you go.
I said, I'm knocking everybody out. I said, I am not leaving it up to chance. I'm not leaving it up to anybody's paper, nothing. And I think I had 5 fights and I knocked out 4 out of the 5 fighters.
Oof.
At one point in my career, Master Joe, I truly felt that there was no female on this planet that could beat me. That's how confident I was.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of A Black Belt Way of Life. I am your host, Master Joe Lupo, and our guest today is the amazing, awesome Grandmaster Mechelle Smith. Ma'am, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I love it.
Thank you. I'm so excited and so honored. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, my super pleasure. And today's opening day of baseball.
Yes.
And I was getting all psyched. I brought the real team of New York.
Yeah.
But I can't really gloat too much because they lost today, and your Yankees, of course, they won.
Yeah, started right out with the home run.
So, but just so the audience, sorry, not sorry. just so you know, audience, 1986 is in my heart. I was 6 years old.
Nice.
I'm not a spoiled Yankee fan winning a gazillion championships. Flushing Queens in the house. So
it's been a while, though. It's been a while.
Stop it. But with that being said, before we get into our episode, make sure, audience, to check out the official sponsor of A Black Belt Way of Life, Mr. Joe Ferrone. This episode of A Black Belt Way of Life is brought to you by Mr. Joseph Ferrone of Weichert Realty. For all your real estate needs, both commercial and residential, don't hesitate to reach out to Mr. Joseph Ferrone. All his information is in the show notes. And our official apparel company, Best Martial Arts, Muto USA. For all your martial arts needs, please check them out. They are also the official sponsor of the USA Masters team. That's why I'm rocking the Masters team shirt tonight. Grandmaster Smith is rocking her USA Masters swag. Got some big things coming up, man.
Yes, sir.
We have the East Coast Masters seminar coming up at the end of the month.
Yes.
That you will be running alongside myself.
Yes, sir.
Just so you know, I'm there for you, ma'am, to demonstrate all your techniques. And now I was gonna hold off on this, but you know what? We're gonna hit that home. We're gonna get it out of the way right now. We're gonna hit that home run. Grandmaster Smith, she let me tell you, she packs quite a punch and quite a follow-up, back leg roundhouse kick. An awesome part of the seminar last year. She actually broke my rib.
Stop. Oh, it felt so bad.
I hope your opponents at the World's Masters Games are watching this right now.
Send a message. Send it early.
Send a message, But you know what, ma'am? It was, as crazy as this sounds, you could do it again and I'm all good with it. Don't even worry about it. You demonstrated a beautiful technique. It got across to the crowd. They understood it. And believe me, I understood it as well.
Oh, man. Just got a little overexcited there for a second.
It's all good. It's all good. But the best part is I kept going.
You did.
I kept going till the very end. Even one of our awesome producers here tonight who was videotaping that day. And the whole time he's telling me, Joe, I think you should stop.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'll keep going. Maybe I'll listen.
You showed no signs, no sign. And I was like, and then later I saw you wince, and I'm like, all right, what? Yeah,
That's how we're programmed, man. You
you're
know,
a warrior. Yeah,
we come from that old school of training that you know so much about,
yeah, you can't
you
show
know,
it.
and that's actually where I want to start. Ma'am, please tell us you know, what inspired you to start martial arts, and you know, where did you start, and what got you involved? How did that come to be?
Yeah, I actually started late. I actually started at 17 in
Oh wow.
my senior year of high school.
And what year was this?
Yeah, 19 1979. And
Wow.
I heard on the podcast earlier, you were like, I was 8 when it was 1980, I think. And I'm like, oh my God.
No,
Yeah.
no. When you started Taekwondo, I was a glimmer in my mother's eye.
Okay.
I
Oh
was
yeah.
born 1980. I
You
was
were
born.
born in 19, that was it was born in 19, yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
yeah.
Yeah, I started in 1979. Actually being kind of a little bit of a wise person because a good friend of mine that I went to high school with, uh, Johnny Mitchell, he was actually I saw him in the gym one day during lunch, and I
Hmm.
saw him he was doing kicking and he was doing some pumse and everything, and I didn't know at the time what it was. And so I was in there and I'm like, being a wise guy, I'm like, you don't know that stuff, knock it off, and
Right.
he's like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "No." I said, "No, you don't. Everybody picks on you and you never do anything and all this stuff." And
Hmm.
he says, "Well, you don't have to do anything unless you really, really have to do something." So in other words, he was saying, there's no reason to, you know, jump to the hype because sticks and stones kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then he said, come to my school where I teach and you can see. And I was like, okay. So I went and he was teaching class and I sat there and I watched the entire class. And at the end of it, I was like, I was in hook, line,
You were
and
hooked.
sinker. I was in. I'm like,
Wow.
this is what I want to do. I want to do this. My 17th birthday was coming up.
Okay.
And, I went home and I said to my mom, I said, we didn't come from a lot of money. And so I said, listen, all I want to do is I want to do Taekwondo for my birthday if we can
Hmm.
do that. And it didn't cost that much that back then. I think,
Sure, sure,
it's
sure.
like $25 a month or something like that.
Hmm.
So that's when I started. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So now, when you started in 1979, and you know, I always do my homework for every episode, and today I looked at a picture, a class picture from when my father got his black belt in 1974. Now you see, I want to say about 100 people were in this class picture from my grandmaster school. And I could literally pick out in that picture the amount of women I saw and
Mm.
children.
Yeah.
It was predominantly grown
Yes.
males.
Yep.
I think I saw two women. Granted, this is 5 years earlier than when you started, so times had already started to change.
Hmm.
But I would imagine it was still predominantly males.
Yes. I was one of three
Oh wow.
in the school. There was uh, a female black belt by the name of Lori Skiff. There was a green belt, and then there was me.
Wow.
And I was a white belt that time, and the
Hmm.
rest were all guys. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then talk to me how training was
Um,
you know, did you feel, you know, did you feel like you were overshadowed? Did you feel like, did you feel any less than the males? How was the environment?
so for me, I was an extreme introvert. So
Okay.
I was extremely shy. I didn't talk. I didn't I didn't look at anybody. I don't think I key up until I was a green belt.
Oh wow.
I mean, I I used to cry, when and because back then it was warm-ups, basic technique, and spar.
Yeah.
That's what it was, and, it was always sparring. It was al and you started out competing at white belt, and
Oh wow.
my instructor was very he was very dominant as far as, don't go easy on the girls.
Okay.
He would say, hit them like you would hit each
That
other.
you just took away my next question.
Yeah, yeah, that
Yeah.
was it. And he would say, if you get in a situation in the street, they're gonna hit you like they're gonna hit a grown man. So
That's absolutely
yeah,
true.
so that was the environment, and I was the biggest baby for the longest
Really.
time. Oh my god, I hated sparring. I hated, getting out there. I cry all the time, and yeah, I'm surprised my instructor stayed with me.
Wow.
Tell you the truth, yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's so now that brings me to you becoming an accomplished competitor. So through that quote unquote tough love that you experienced during training,
Mhm.
how did that come to be?
So, well, like I said, we sparred right away. And
Hmm.
back then, people would come into the school and you would clear the floor, and it was like you see on TV, like somebody come
Like
in and
challenges.
yeah, they would
Really?
challenge, yeah. They would
Oh
challenge,
wow.
yeah, challenge during the class, and you clear the floor, and my instructor would pick out the best guy, and if you can get through them, that kind of thing. So that was
Really?
kind of the environment, yeah. And
Oh,
and we competed all the time. We always went to competitions, and I lost every single competition for the first 2 years of competition. I mean,
wow.
it was a standing joke, like, when would I get disqualified? Because I would lose my temper. I had the worst temper. I would lose my temper. It was awful. I mean, everything that I tell my students not to do,
You did.
I learned the hard way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, throwing stuff, temper tantrums, it was awful. And,
Wow.
yeah, so I lost for a long, long time, and then my instructor said, "If you're gonna continue to spar,
Hmm.
you have to compete in forms
Mm.
because you need to learn how to control your temper."
Wow. That's a
Yeah,
very interesting point.
so he's
Wow.
like, "You're not gonna spar unless you compete in forms." And I knew I was very competitive
Hmm.
at that point, so I started practicing my form because, of course, if I'm gonna do forms, I wanna win. So, so I started concentrating on form, and lo and behold, who knew? But your instructor of how many years of training that he had before me,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I started to calm down. I started to relax. I started to get more control over myself.
Yeah.
You see much better when you're out there.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you're fighting more with your mind than you are
Yeah,
physically.
yeah.
Sure.
Things kinda slow down, and yeah,
Wow.
and that's when I started winning. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep.
That's a really, really interesting point. That I think a lot of people today and you know, a lot of the fighters they don't appreciate form
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
see.
Yep.
I even see it in my own students. If during a competition class, I could never imagine, stopping someone and say, do a form. They
Who's
look
say,
at me like I'm nuts.
or else they just kinda you can tell the ones that, do a maintenance test, or, progression
Hmm.
test to keep their black belt, and you can always tell the ones that are, competitive athletes because 'cause they're just going through the motions of the poomsae, you know,
Yeah.
and trying to get through it kinda thing, and
There you
but
go.
yeah, no, I that's one of the things I've always prided myself on is I never lost the traditional part, no matter
Okay.
how competitive I got, what level I got to. I always made sure that I stayed connected to the traditional part of it. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Because at the
because
end of the day, we want to be a complete martial artist.
exactly, exactly. And outside of sport taekwondo, there's real life.
Sure.
There's street situations that you have to.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
That a lot of it is found in our pumse.
exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always stay connected to that part. I always want my athletes to stay connected to that.
Hmm.
So even though they do competition team, I require them to take at least one traditional class a week. So
That's good.
to stay
That's.
connected to it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So now for yourself, so now you obviously got past the hump of losing, and like I've said on this podcast many times, I tell my athletes I believe we either win or we learn.
Mhm.
So, you went through 2 years of learning,
Mhm.
learning about who you are, what you needed to fix, how you just, explained through your instructor. So now you're starting to win. When was your break? When did you really start to see that you could reach a very high level of competition?
I think, like I said, I didn't start winning until after red belt.
Mhm.
And then and back then I was a point fighter, we didn't do Hogu sparring. It was point fighting
Oh,
back
yeah?
then. Yeah, it was all point fighting in this area, and, I used to fight, a lot in the Battle of Atlanta and,
Yeah.
the Linda Denley days, the Arlene Lima
Yeah?
days, all that. Yeah, I fought on that
Mhm.
circuit. I got to a point where I was so comfortable with what I could do,
Mhm.
and it sounds cocky, but I got to a point where I could never see myself losing. I couldn't see myself losing,
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, I just and I put the work in. I put a lot of work in, I
Sure.
trained a lot, double end bag with your feet instead of your hands, so your
Yeah.
feet are quicker,
Yeah.
and I boxed as well, so my hands were
Mhm.
quicker. Yeah, so I got to the point where I really, really thought of myself as the best out there.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah,
I mean, and you brought up, you started off as a point fighter.
right.
My last guest on this podcast was, the one and only Mark Williams.
Yes.
And, probably one of the best point fighters, around, maybe ever,
Yeah,
one of
absolutely,
the
yeah.
the biggest events. And he brought up a very, very interesting point, how back in the day, a lot of the WTF fighters, they kind of looked down on point fighters.
Yeah,
But what they didn't understand, and he said this perfectly, if I could kick the hair on your face and not touch your skin,
exactly,
imagine what I could do if I threw the kick.
exactly.
So now I completely understand, because this is a man who, when he was about retired, went to go fight national championships, USTU back then,
Mhm.
and he won. So now you go from point fighting. Did you find that transition into the full contact easy?
No, no,
No.
not for me.
Okay.
No, it was hard because, I'm gonna digress a little bit, but, I was born with a severe curve in my spine,
Ooh.
um, and I also injured my spine in an, accident when I was younger. I
Mm-hmm.
I jumped out of a barn, and
Oh, oh,
and
cool.
yeah, me and my brother, yeah, we jumped
All
out I
right.
jumping out of barn, and, it was snow, and I hit solid ice when
Oh,
I hit. So, yeah, so they weren't sure if I was gonna walk again. It was whole thing. So
oh, wow.
my spine really condensed, and it's right now it's in a severe S shape.
Okay.
So they told me back then that I would need a rod in my spine, and
Wow.
back then it was the body cast.
Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know, you're too young to remember, but it would be a
No,
full
no,
the
I've seen
full
it in movies. I've
yeah,
seen it in
the
movies.
full body
You got
cast.
two rods coming out your
Yes,
side. Your arms are
yes,
propped up here.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
underneath yeah, and underneath your chin.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, they expected me to go through my senior year like that. I was like, "No,
Oh, wow.
no, no, no." So, I did some research back then, and they said the stronger your upper body, the stronger your spine. Strong.
Oh, yeah.
Stand up straighter. So
Sure.
so that's when I started lifting weights.
Okay.
So I lifted, and I still do to this day because my spine is getting worse as I get older. So yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
when I transitioned into Hogu sparring, it was very difficult because first of all, I'm not flexible for a female. Like females are normally flexible, and I'm not. I'm not flexible at all. So I had to, every head kick, every this, every that had to be, it was more muscle than it was flexibility getting up there. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh,
But
I know what you mean.
yeah, and
Yeah.
because typically women, they could just flip, go right into a split and all that stuff, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
me. So yeah, so when I switched over to Hogu sparring, it was a very different because it was well now it's a front leg sport again.
Yes.
but back then it was a back leg sport.
There's a back leg. Yes.
But I was a point fighter, so I was a front leg kicker.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, so I had to switch
With
everything
like you said, without the flexibility.
without the flexibility. Yeah, so
Makes sense.
I had to switch everything around. I was fortunate enough the first Hogu sparring match I did at Nationals, USTU Nationals in 1986.
Okay.
Um, and I was fortunate enough to take bronze. That was my first time at Nationals. And I was fortunate enough to take bronze. I earned a spot at the Olympic Training Center for a training seminar. Went out there,
Hmm.
learned everything I possibly could do. The footwork was everything was different,
Sure.
and it was just in all. And I was the new kid on the block. Nobody knew me, and so I had to learn
Hmm.
everything. And I remember I was out at OTC and I'd be crying at night because
Aw.
everything hurt. My back hurt, my hips hurt. It was just the training was just so different, but I couldn't show it. But I would call my mom at night and I'm like, I don't belong here. This is awful. And
Aw.
yeah, it was awful. And I just felt out of place. And my mom was like, you earned that spot. So you're not coming home. She was just saying point blank, you're not coming home. You're
Yep.
there. You're there
Hmm.
to stay. So learn what you got to learn. Get over it. Stop crying,
Hmm.
and let's get to work. So yeah. So I learned everything I possibly could. Went home, trained every single day, full time job. Go back to the
Hmm.
dojang, train some more, that kind of thing. And then the next year at USTU Nationals, I took gold.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So it was a quick, but it was a lot of work. Yeah, it was a lot of work. So,
And that was the year you made team.
yeah, I was gold medalist in '87. I don't think they had a team that year, but I
Okay.
was but I was uh national champion in '87. And then of course, '88 came along and went to, I took state championship, took national championship again.
Hmm.
They didn't give up medals, but I won all my matches at team trials, at the Olympic team
Okay.
trials, won all of them. So it came down to myself and Sharon at finals. And I respect,
Sharon Jewell.
yes.
Yes.
And we both thought the same. We both were just, it's on. Like,
Hmm.
we always battled. And I was first and she was second. And so we fought in North Carolina at the finals. And every athlete is going to say this. I felt I won that match
Yeah.
hands down. I love
Hmm.
Sharon. We were brutal enemies back then, but I respect her as a fighter. I respect her as an individual today. She's a pioneer. She's a legend. But I felt I dominated all 3 rounds.
Yeah.
And so when they raised her hand for the team spot, I was absolutely devastated, just
Yeah.
devastated. And that was one of the most brutal things that ever happened to me in my life. I remember that to this day. The next day, I went back because the other 4 weight divisions were fighting for the team spot. So I went to cheer on the teammates and things like that. And um, I don't know if anybody ever knows this, and I never said this in public because I never wanted to be disrespectful. But
Hmm.
3 out of the 4 officials,
Hmm.
because I was so upset that day. Three out of
Hmm.
the 4 officials came up to me and told me they scored me that match.
Oof.
Three
So
out of the
now, if the
4.
audience see for the audience that knows modern taekwondo today, they see obviously the scoreboard, they see the electronics, they see all of that. But we're talking 1988, where everything was on
Papers.
a piece of paper and a pencil, and
Yeah.
then um, personally, I never saw those score sheets, and I doubt you ever did as well.
No, whoever was up at that head table
Exactly.
decided it wasn't going to be me that day.
Hmm.
So, um, and I never, obviously, because if it was the other way around, Master Joe, if it was the other way
Sure.
around and they raised my hand, I would go.
Hmm.
I'd go. I'd go to the Olympics. Absolutely.
Sure.
So I never faulted Miss Jewel at all.
Okay.
It was never, it's not her fault. I wished her the best of luck. She did amazing at the Olympics. But
Hmm.
for me personally, it was devastating. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because I had done so much, to get to where I was, you know what I mean? And it's something that, you can never get back. You just can't,
Exactly.
you know. So, and it's a piece of history, you know. So it was, yeah. So it was kind of the one of the hardest things for me. But like I said, nothing disrespectful against her, because if it were the other way around, and if she were sitting in the seat, she would tell you the same story.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
She,
now, a big part of this podcast is how we always talk about, overcoming, hardships, overcoming situations. And you just poured your heart into what you just explained to us. Now tell the audience, how did you overcome this? Because you're obviously, we're in 2025 and your Taekwondo story continues.
it does. Yeah.
It's a beautiful, beautiful, book that you're writing.
Mm.
How did you overcome that hardship and situation?
Um, well, I think for me, it would have been better if I didn't know, because like I said, if Miss Jewel were sitting here, she would tell you that she won that spot, and I would agree, I would agree with her. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? Because, like I said, taking nothing away from her whatsoever. Um, but it took me a while to get it to I've never gotten over it. Let's be perfectly honest. I've
yeah,
never
yeah, yeah.
gotten over it, as we could tell. Um,
Mhm.
but it took me a while to get back on track. I
Okay.
was I was very self-destructive for a couple of years after that. Very
Mhm,
self-destructive, very angry, you know. So it took me a little bit to get back and get my head back on straight and figure out what I wanted to do. I had applied for the state police, and I went into the state police academy.
mhm,
Um, so that was a challenge. 6 months at the academy, and then it was in 1990, I took time off from the state police to start training for 1991 games and 1992.
mhm.
So that kind of got me refocused.
So now you're back, your focus is back, and we're back into
Mhm.
training. How did that process go?
It went great. I mean, 91, I took the national title again in 91 when I came back.
Mhm.
92, I didn't have to fight at nationals because I had won in 91.
You
So
already had the team spot.
yeah, so I went into team trials. I had to lose weight because they weren't taking middleweight.
Mhm,
So I had
mhm,
to drop down to welterweight, which is it's not a natural weight for me. So that was very, very difficult. I went into the welterweight division and for team trials, and it was a little controversial again, but
yeah.
you know,
We're still on pen and paper.
yeah, it was a little I won my first couple of matches, and then I had to fight someone whose coach was a former Olympian. And so we're fighting, and we get done, and the young lady, we bow, and she shakes my hand, and she says, "Thank you so much." She whispers to me, "Thank you for not, you know, killing me," or whatever she said to
Oh,
me. And she goes, "Good luck in your next match." And I said, "Thank you." And they raised her hand. And I
oh my god.
yeah,
Oh,
and I was like, "What is
oh,
going on?"
oh.
So that was it. That was it for that for 92 Olympics. She went on,
Mhm,
and I believe Danielle Laney got the spot that year.
mhm,
Yes, and speed ahead, we had also team trials for Pan American Games, for Pan American Championships, and I went into that. I went right into that at the middleweight division, my
mhm.
natural weight.
Your natural weight.
Yeah, and I remember going into the warm-up room, for the day. We're going back in the warm-up room, and I remember going in there, and I just said to everybody, "I don't care who you are. I don't care who your coach is. I don't care how well I know you. I'm knocking everybody out today."
There you go.
I said, I'm
That's what I
knocking
like.
everybody out. I said, I am not leaving it up to chance. I'm
There
not
you go.
leaving it up to anybody's paper, nothing. And I think I had 5 fights, and I knocked out 4 out of the 5 fighters,
Oof.
and got the team spot for 92 games, and then went
Mhm.
on to and then I wound up beating the silver gold medalists at the 92 Pan Am Games.
Oh wow. Would you
Yeah.
say? Would you say? See, that. These are the things I love hearing on this podcast. How you flip that negative into a positive. Would you say that gold medal at Pan Am's was probably one of your greatest accomplishments as a competitor?
Absolutely. I
See, there
was
you go.
I was bawling like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because it was because I won, but it was because I just felt, uh, validated. You know, I felt heard, I felt acknowledged,
Hmm.
I felt so many things that day, you know what I mean? Um, because I always referred to myself as the horseshoe kid, you know how in horseshoes you can come close and be okay?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
kinda thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, because it's the same thing, like, after the '88 games, um, we had a US Cup or Goodwill tour a month after the Olympics,
Hmm.
and, Korea came, they sent their A team, Spain, Mexico, and I remember, uh, Sharon had gone on, I think it was to law school, so she didn't fight, so I was the alternate, right? I was the
Hmm.
first alternate for the '88 games, and so they called me to fight, and the first thing I said was, "Is the Olympic gold medalist gonna be there?"
Hmm. Oh
When they
wow.
called me, which was the young lady from Korea, and they
Hmm.
said, "Yes." I said, Absolutely, I'll fight." And and,
That's New York.
you
For
know
anyone listening to this right now, this is straight up New York
you know,
talk, and I love it.
I was like, "Absolutely, I'll fight." And I and I went into Rocky training because I was like, "Okay, I gotta get back in shape," all this stuff, and sure enough, she was my first fight, Korea was my first fight, and I beat her,
Wow.
and she was the Olympic gold medalist for '88, and I beat her,
Wow.
and then I went on to beat everybody that day, and I remember, the young lady from Korea came up to me and she said, and again, I no disrespect, but she said to me, "Where is Sharon?"
Mm,
And I said, "You didn't get her today." I said, you
right.
got me."
So
Right? Yeah. So that was my
through some
big chip on my shoulder that day.
there you go. So through some national, as we could put it, some national disappointment, you made up for it
I
internationally.
tried my best. I tried my best. It
Yeah.
was just yeah, it was just I mean, and who knows? Who knows if I had gone to the
Sure.
Olympics, who knows? I might have lost my first match. Who knows?
Sure. We
You
don't
know,
know.
you don't know. You don't know until you fight. You know what I mean? But I just know that when I heard she was gonna be there, I knew I wanted to fight her. And
Hmm.
Pan Am Championships when they were lining us up and they have our flags and for finals, and I was standing
Hmm.
and then the girl, I think she was from Canada. She was a silver gold medalist for 92 games. She was there, and I remember the coach, my coach looked at me and he said, "How do you feel?" And I looked across and I saw her and she had all her Olympic stuff on, all the
Hmm.
Olympic rings and everything like this. And I said, "Sir, she's not winning.
There
She's
you
not winning
go.
today." And he laughed, and I was like, "Shit, she's not winning today," you know?
I really, really, hope the athletes of today are really paying attention to everything coming out of your mouth because it's so important because I've seen it in some of my athletes. They've gone to competition and they're probably just starting and they're climbing up the ranks. And I remember one of my students in particular. It was her first time. You know her well, my girl Alexa,
Mhm.
and it was her first time fighting at an open. And her first match, she was up against a girl from, if I'm right, yeah, it was Canada. And the girl had the country code on the back of the dobok,
Right.
and I could just see my girl Alexa. She's shivering.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Because already you're losing before you even get
Yes.
into the ring.
Absolutely.
Before you get in, you're already losing. You
And we've
can't
all
do
been
that to
there.
yourself.
We've all
Oh,
been there,
100%.
Yeah, we've all been there. It's a hard thing to overcome, but
Mm-hmm.
once you overcome that, I mean, at one point in my career, Master Joe, I
Mm-hmm.
truly felt that there was no female on this planet that could beat me. That's how confident I was.
The
It,
baddest woman on the planet.
I just I
That's
I knew it, I felt it, and I don't know how I got there because when I started out, I was so shy and so this and so that,
mhm,
but yeah, but once you get to that point, and I always tell my athletes, it's not being cocky, it's being confident because
mhm.
you need that. I mean,
You
99% of
have
it is
to.
confidence in yourself.
Oh, for
You know
sure.
what I mean? You have to believe when you get in the ring that it's yours. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
you have to
So,
believe that everything you're going to do that day is going to work.
yeah,
Any amount of self-doubt is a difference between a win and a loss,
absolutely.
for sure.
Yeah, I
We
truly
we
believe
we
that.
can't we can't hesitate out there.
Right,
No,
right.
no way.
Exactly. Yeah. So I try and tell my athletes all the time, this is not you're not being cocky. You're being cocky when you're disrespectful to somebody. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Or, you're dismissive of somebody. You know what I
Mhm,
mean? That's when you're being cocky. You're not being cocky because you believe in yourself. That's just confidence. That's just straight up confidence. But you have to acknowledge the past. You have to acknowledge the present. You have to acknowledge the future. Of athletes that are going to come. Um,
mhm.
and respect. I respect every single person I ever fought. You know, like I said, I respect Miss Jewel 100%, 100%.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Every person I've ever fought, I've had respect for. If they knocked me
yeah.
out, I've been knocked out cold. If they knock me out, I wake up and I find them and I shake their hand. It's like,
Right,
hey,
right.
yeah, it was you today. So yeah.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, it's always a martial art, and the first thing we teach and that we were taught is respect.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's we have to always keep that
Yes,
always.
sir. Yes,
Now,
sir. Absolutely.
now, now, let's go post your competition career. When did you open up your school?
I opened my school in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 1996. I was still a trooper. So I had a part-time school.
Okay.
I had a couple partners because I would sometimes be called away, to troop
Yep. Yep.
that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, I opened up in 96 and then had a little setback because my first school was called Elite Taekwondo, and then I had a little setback with a partner, and so I reopened a school under MW Taekwondo, which was short for Michelle's Way, which
Mm-hmm.
which meant I was only going to do it my way, and that's it.
That's it. We got some Frank Sinatra talk going on right now. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. So yeah, so I condensed it to MW Taekwondo, but yeah, that was
Okay.
basically it. Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Now, bringing it back to something I spoke about earlier, how when you started Taekwondo, you were just, as you put it, you were just one of three females in the school. Now, you own your own school,
Mhm.
you're doing it your way. Did you feel a little apprehensive? Because I'm sure even at that time, or even to this day, the martial arts business, schools is predominantly a male run
Absolutely.
industry.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you feel apprehensive at all? Uh,
Um, I did, but I knew that a good friend of mine told me, he was a boxer. He said to me, because I was cautious about putting my accolades out there, because again, I didn't want to feel like I was putting on airs, you know.
mhm,
And he said to me one day, he said, Michelle, don't ever be afraid to tell somebody who you are and what you've done. Don't ever be afraid of that. You know what I mean? Don't ever be
mhm,
embarrassed by it. Don't be, And I said, well, I don't want to come off as, this. He said, no, no, no. He said, people have to have confidence in what they're doing when they come into your school. And being a female, it takes a lot for a male to come in with his son to train with a female instructor. You know what I mean?
mhm,
So yeah, I had to, and it was good because back in the days I was still very well known. You know what I mean? In my area, I was very well known,
mhm.
and so that helped a lot too. Because people knew me. Mechelle Smith, '88 Olympics, '92 Pan Am Games, and so they knew who I was. So when they came in, it that helped. It really did.
Sure,
Yeah, yeah.
sure. No,
Because
no,
I don't think
credentials.
it would have, had I not had those credentials behind me, it probably would have
Mhm.
been very tough. Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. So now you're running a successful school. Time has passed since you've competed.
Right. Yeah.
Brings me up to, you know, a very, very, special point that I'm about to make, because I'm blessed to say that I've been part of this journey with you. What
Yeah.
made you get back into that ring?
Uh, an amazing person that we all know and love.
Mm-hmm.
Captain, oh my captain,
Yes.
Miss Trinity Trunk Osborne. I saw her. I first met her at the U.S. Champions
Mm-hmm.
uh, dinner. Um, Unfortunately, I haven't been able to go back to them, but I've been to two of them. And the second one, I met her, and she was just, she was just so energetic and just so friendly, and we were talking. We got, we got to talking, and she said to me, she said, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if we made a team for U.S. Masters and fought in Italy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And I I hadn't fought in 18 years. I was
Wow.
overweight at the time. It was, yeah. And she goes, "No, that would be great. That'd be great." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, put me down, put me down." And I thought it was just, a bunch of people that were gonna get together and have a great time in Italy, you know? And while we were there, we do a little competition, you know what I mean? So,
Right, 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 right.
um yeah, but I mean, she went in. She was all in, and she got us all pumped, and people started posting workout videos on Facebook, and I'm like, "Oh my
Mm-hmm.
god, these guys are serious." And, I'm like, "I better get back in shape," you know? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I dropped about 18, 20 pounds and
Mm-hmm.
got back after it, and, yeah, and we went out, yep, we went out there, right? All of
Oh,
us.
it was an amazing time,
We became
and
family.
oh, for sure, for sure. It's beautiful what, this martial art, what Taekwondo, does to like-minded individuals, brought us together. We found our tribe,
Mhm, absolutely.
and we've made each other better in so many ways outside of the sport. I know that if I need something, I could call you.
Absolutely.
If you need something, you could call me. We'll make it happen.
Yes.
You know, um, and a little funny story. I could make it happen for you.
Absolutely,
I,
you can. Bro, absolutely.
you know,
You got me. I was, yeah, I'm like, I can't believe you came through with this, but you did.
so this is post competition, and you left your phone in a cab.
In a cab, in Italy. I don't speak the
In Italy.
language.
So just imagine, Torino it's a metropolitan city at the end of the day. It's for anyone that doesn't know, it's the industrial part of Italy. Cabs all over the place. Just imagine you leave your phone in a New York City cab.
Yes.
Man, you're never finding that
You're
thing.
not gonna get that back. No.
We're not going to go too deep into the story. I, I don't know who's watching this,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
let's just put it this way. I asked someone very special to me to make one phone call. Well, you know what? That phone showed up.
It did. It did. And it was beautiful too because I remember it because first of all, and my other brothers, Owen and Wayne, they
Yes.
they literally drove around because we're doing Find My
Mm-hmm.
Phone.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And this is the night before competition. We're driving around Italy. We don't even know
Mm-hmm.
where we are. And we found this guy. He must have drove home and he's in this big apartment. We don't know, right? And you made
Yeah.
it happen. And then but what was great was the next day when I fought, I was so happy when I won because we went into overtime and I hadn't fought in
Yes.
18 years and it had been
Yeah.
so long and I was just ecstatic. I was so
Mm-hmm.
happy that I won. And then 10 minutes later, you come up and you go, "Ma'am, I got your phone." I'm like, "Are you kidding?" It was like another gold medal.
There you go.
Yeah. I was like, "This is the best day ever."
Yeah,
Yeah,
listen, where there's a will, there's a way. You know,
yeah,
we'll make it work, and that's what family does.
yeah. It was one of
You
those
know,
don't ask, but I got it.
don't nobody ask any questions, okay?
Nobody
Nobody
ask any
ask.
questions.
We
Yeah,
we made it happen.
we made it. Yes.
So it's great, and the beautiful thing is that we have these stories to talk about. You know, we have these things to share,
Yeah,
and it's only grown as the years have passed.
yeah,
We were together in Korea.
yeah.
It was great, and now we're going into our second year of running the official Masters Team seminar together
Yes.
at my dojang, and that's going
Yeah.
to be in the end of April.
Right.
Talk to the audience about that.
Well, I think what makes it so special is, and we've said this before, is the fact that you have so many people who have that one goal, that one passion, that one drive, and we're all older individuals, you know what I mean? We're all
Mm-hmm.
older, we're mature, we're past the, eye in our competition kind of thing,
Sure.
and we're past the, trash talking, and that's what makes it special, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
we get together, we train, we push each other, we spar hard, and then we have dinner,
Then we
you
have
know?
dinner, right?
We have
We have
dinner.
some good
So
Italian
we got
food.
some great Italian food. Yes, yes. I can't wait for
you
that.
know,
Yeah, and we
right?
have dinner. Yeah,
See,
yeah.
there you go. So older ultra masters slash athletes, just know that after Coach Smith whoops your ass, you know, my mom is gonna feed you.
So we're gonna manja.
We're gonna manja. We're gonna have some
Good food.
good pasta, good
Yeah,
vino all together. We're gonna have a great time. And
yeah.
and I talk about this because I really hope this, and this is a big part of what the Masters team is. You know, we want the younger generations of athletes. We want to resonate with them.
Mm,
There is more
sure.
to the sport.
Right.
There is more to it. The camaraderie. I feel this is where our responsibility lies. We have to set the example,
Mhm,
for the younger athletes
mhm.
that this sport is more than a sport.
Right,
How we're talking about, it's a family,
right.
and there is, so much more to it. The camaraderie itself. I mean, just think about it. Just think about how we do the New York seminar that I've learned for years. We really, really focus on the fighting.
Right,
We make sure everyone gets as many fights as possible,
right.
especially because World Masters Games is around the corner.
Around the corner,
So
yeah.
this is, yeah, so this is probably the last opportunity for
Yeah,
many of us to get together and really, go at it a
right.
little bit.
Yeah.
But even after all that, we're smiling and we're having a
Yeah.
great time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and I used to say, like, back when, and I listened to Mark a little bit this today, and it's true. I mean, when you fought back then, it was a fight. It was a fight,
Hmm.
it was a fight. And my thing was, like I said, I always respected my competitor, whether
Hmm.
whether they beat me bloody. I mean, I've been I've been beat. I've had my
Yeah.
face rearranged. I had my
Hmm.
my cheekbone crushed, my nose broke 3 times, my ribs broke,
Oof.
but I never I, like, enjoyed it, I enjoyed the fight, whether I won or lost, I always enjoyed the match, you know what I mean? And
Hmm.
and the harder it was, the more I enjoyed it, because I just felt like, it was that passion, that you just went out on the mat and you were a warrior for that amount of time, you know what I mean? And in our age group, me being me being older than everybody else on the planet right now, but in our in our group, we don't move like we used to.
Yes.
We don't kick as high as we used to do it. You know what? But we're smart. We're smarter.
The mind is there.
Yeah, we're smarter
The body
fighters.
the body might not be able to catch up to it, but the mind is there.
But we know how to manipulate our body
Sure.
properly,
Hmm.
because we're much smarter fighters now. And that aspect I enjoy. I enjoy that, because for
Hmm.
me, fighting has always been strategic.
Yes.
It's strategic, you know what I mean? It's like, you know, when you get behind, how do I get back? How do I get back into the match? How do I get back into the points? You know what I mean? Or if you're ahead, how do you keep that? How do you keep that?
Sure.
You know? So it's always been strategic. And as you get older, you know, and this is what Master Trinity has opened up to us because, you know, we thought, okay, once we get past, you know, seniors and we're, you know, we're not making teams anymore, you know, so what do? We get fat, dumb, and
Mhm.
happy, you know. And but she showed us that no, there you can, you know, obviously you can coach and you can train athletes, right?
Mhm.
But now she showed us that we can get back in that ring.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We can get back in there. Um, like I said, we're not as fast as we used to. We don't move, you know. Well, I speak for myself because y'all look good
Mhm.
out there, you know.
Stop it. You look great.
And but you know, we're smarter. We're smarter
Mhm.
athletes, you know.
Yeah.
And
And it keeps us healthy. The most important
yes,
thing
yes,
above all.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
And again, with my back as I get older, it's only going to get worse.
Sure.
So, you know, I can't stop working out. It has to be forever. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So that she brought that back to me, you know, and she doesn't even know it, you know, because like I said, when I wasn't competing for those interim years, I really wasn't. I mean, I would work out, but I wasn't pushing myself. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
was, you know, I was saying, okay, you're 50, you know, relax, go to the gym, have a great time, you know. And then when I got 60, you know, but you know, she actually opened this up to me, but like, no, you don't have to suffer getting older. You can stay, you can keep yourself in good shape and
Sure.
enjoy where you are in life. And
Yeah.
that's where I am now. I'm enjoying it, you know. I'm enjoying it. It's awesome.
So now I'm going to ask you a very important question. It's
Mm.
going to be my final question of the night. With the World Masters Games around the corner, you are competing, correct?
I hope so. I really hope
Yeah.
so. I really hope so. I'm training like as if I'm going to.
Mhm.
I'm hoping that there's somebody for me to, you know, I hope there's a few people for me to compete against.
Yes.
Yeah, because you know your first
So,
match is always the bad one. It's your second,
right?
third match where you know, you got
So so let's say hypothetically in a perfect world, there's someone out there ready to fight you.
mm,
Is this going to be your last competition?
yes, definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that brought me back from Korea, because I said if I won in Korea, because I fought in Korea before,
Mhm.
in 2001, I fought in Korea. And I said, okay, I won in 2001. If I go back to Korea at my age, I think, what was I, 61 at that point? Um,
Years young. Yes.
yeah. And if I won, I'm going to retire, right? You guys were
Mm.
beautiful. You signed my dobok. It was awesome.
Yes.
You know, it was amazing. And I said, I'm going to give back and, you know, whatever capacity I can help this team, uh,
Mhm.
you know, progress and whatever I can do to help Masters team, that's what I'm going to do. And then I heard Worlds. I heard Worlds, and I was like, well, yeah, maybe I'll do that. Because remember, we were supposed to go to Australia?
Japan.
Oh, Japan.
No, Japan.
And then COVID happened.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a world championship too. So, yeah, so we'll see. You know, I'm also going to be coaching out there with you guys. You
Yes.
know, whatever I can do for you guys to help, I will do. But if yeah, hopefully I have some matches because, yeah, I don't care if I win or lose. I just wanna fight one more. Yeah, one more time.
That's beautiful. And for the audience, Coach Smith,
Mm,
Grandmaster Smith, alongside Master Coach Pinrock.
mhm.
In the show notes, you guys are going to find a donation link. Please, let's support the USA Masters team. Let's support these amazing coaches. You'll find that link. Um, any amount helps, you know, because at the end of the day, we do this with our heart. We do this for the love of the sport. We do this to pass it down to future generations of the sport. And every little bit helps, you know. This is all out of pocket for us. Like I said, every little bit helps. Please check out the show notes for that link afterwards. Ma'am,
Yes, sir.
I cannot tell you how much I'm psyched. I'm pumped. I'm ready to see you in a couple of weeks.
Yes, sir.
You know, we're gonna have a great time.
Yes.
I can't wait. And just know you could kick me as hard as you want. I am gonna take it like a man. You know, you got listen. Again, like I said in the beginning, I know what pain is. You see that?
Look,
I know what pain.
Look, I'm
I
a
know what
Dolphins
pain
fan.
is.
I'm a Dolphins
Oh,
fan, so I know what
oh,
pain is. Yeah,
oh, man.
I know what pain is. Yes,
So
but
I
yeah.
got you, ma'am. We're gonna have a great seminar.
Yes,
It's
sir.
gonna be awesome.
I
Thank
can't
you
wait
so
to
much
see
for.
everybody. Yeah, I can't wait to see
Thank you
everybody.
so much. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. On that note, thank you everyone for tuning in to A Black Belt Way of Life. Follow us wherever you consume your podcasts, both audio and visual on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment. If you would like to sponsor A Black Belt Way of Life, shoot us an email at a Black Belt Way of Life podcast at gmail.com. Check out our official apparel company, Best Martial Arts Muto USA, for all your martial arts needs. Thank you to our amazing sponsor, Mr. Joseph Ferrone of Weichert Realty, for all your commercial and residential real estate needs. Don't hesitate to follow. Again, everything is in the show notes. To my amazing audience, to the very, very special Grandmaster Coach Mechelle Smith, let's never forget the words my father always said: a black belt is worn around your heart, never your waist. Thank you very much, everyone. A Black Belt Way of Life was produced by Press Record Studios.